Seeking Sustainability 1. This is a course about sustainability, right? I've talked a bit about Dr. Baird's approach to this topic, but I like what he said here perhaps the most.
It's a course about sustainability where I try really hard to not talk about sustainability. In fact, I haven't done it this year. I think that there's still space, but in the past, I've shown them this video of the Karate Kid, you know, the old Karate Kid movie?
Yeah.
And the kid gets all ticked off because he's painting the guy's house and he's waxing his car and he's sanding the floor and he's doing all this stuff and the kid just loses and it's like, when are you going to teach me karate? And Mr. Miyagi, this is, scene where he says, okay, stand there, show me wax the floor, show me, or wax the car, show me sand the floor. And then he starts to attack the kid and the kid uses all these moves. And it becomes apparent that he has been teaching the kid all along these moves. And the kid just wasn't aware. I feel like we're learning sustainability. We're just not calling it. I just don't want to use that word that much because it's so value-laden. Like, people know what that means, and it's narrow. It's a narrow thing. But really, we're talking about saving the planet, which means saving ourselves. We should talk about more than climate and energy and pandas.
The students don't actually spend time waxing a car. Instead, they spend time thinking and reading about sustainability in unexpected ways.
My background in sustainability and the topic of sustainability is mostly environmental. When I first heard environmental sustainability and what I thought about before I took this class was the practices of overexploiting fossil fuels and the rising temperature and levels of the ocean. I had not thought about sustainability in terms of economics and in terms of bananas. And in terms of, the snakes in Guam. So I definitely got a new perspective, but it still ties into what I already knew about sustainability. It's just adding on different perspectives I'd never heard before. So yeah, I definitely have learned more about what I thought I knew.
Well, because it says seeking sustainability, so I thought it would just be specifically sustainability, but it's more about making connections, how he talks about economically, socially. I would never thought of it in that way.
Yeah, definitely as a sort of science-based major, you don't see a lot of reading heavy intensive classes, and I definitely expected to be laid out like a biology class where we learn about ways to be sustainable, the history of sustainability, but it's definitely opened my eyes at least to the different ways in which you can be sustainable and that it's not just limited to the environment or to plants or nature. It's sustainability has to do with everything that we do in life.
Julia here referred to several of the sections that the class has structured into the syllabus: environmental systems, social systems, and economic systems. The readings in each of these segments are centered on one topic, but Dr. Baird spends time making sure students connect each system to each other. I remember one day in class, everyone was asked to map out the effects that the destruction of one particular crop would have. It starts out simple. That crop is destroyed and the environment around it, and one local economy is ruined. But then things get really complicated. Other economies are affected, other environments as new crops are used as replacements, and more land is converted for farming. The lesson here? Almost every change, or even every constant, has both negative and positive outcomes or effects. So, what does this mean for our big question? What does this mean for trying to find a solution to creating a sustainable future for the world?
And I think Tim asking big questions, how are things connected? That kind of sucks sometimes. From my own experience, when there's very little structure in a very broad question,
right answer,
as an undergrad, you want to get the right answer. Oftentimes, what you're taught is you want to get the answer that the teacher has. So I like that Tim helps them tries to push them to develop their own answer, and there is no right answer, of course, with such a big question like that. So
I think too, especially for a non-philosophy course, he talks a lot about arguments, and that's something that's very important, especially if you want to go to grad school and you have to write a paper in that, or just in, understanding your own beliefs. You have to understand arguments, and that's the whole thing of that paper is, you could have some wacky ideas, but if you argue for them well, that's what the grade is. I think that's valuable, especially coming from a 1,000 level intro course.
In the class that I teach now where there aren't clear right answers, you would think like, oh, I don't need to be in the crosshairs like that where there isn't a right answer that I need to arrive at, so everything's fine. No. What a waste if you go to class and it's just like, hey, the world is complex and everything's connected. Okay, see you Friday. So I want them to respond rationally. What I want them to do is practice critical thinking. And I actually give them a definition that I got from one of my mentors when I was a graduate student. And the definition is, the critical thinking is a rational response to questions that cannot be answered definitively and for which all the relevant information may not be available. This is the difference between my class and the real world, is I'm saying this is the available information. Use this. Don't worry about everything else in the world. So for me, critical thinking, this rational response is an investigation. This is an impossible question. Respond rationally to it. Conduct an investigation using the material from the course and arrive at conclusions or hypotheses that can be justified using that material.
So then, what should we say our definition of sustainability is?
One of his quotes was something along the lines of, it was like a question. It was like, is sustainability like a fool's errand? Is it even possible? Is it something we can even achieve, or we can just try our best to get as close to it? And to me, the word that comes to mind is compromise. And everything is kind of led and talked about kind of leans towards there's never going to be a perfect solution. Everything is a little unstable, but you can find compromises, and that's the only way anything's going to get accomplished. It's not going to be perfect, and that works for anything in life too, not just the environment.
Very well said. I agree with that as well. I second.
So we finally made it to the end of our story. And where does this leave us? We've learned about sustainability, community, learning spaces, teaching styles, and different types of coursework. What are our final takeaways? Next time on our Active Learning Story.